ever feel like we're living in a sci-fi movie?
Hmm.
But like one that's only half written. Like we've got all this amazing technology,
Yeah.
but we're still figuring out what it all means.
Right.
Take self-driving cars, for example.
Right.
On the one hand, you've got Teslas out there cruising down the highway, changing lanes, even parking themselves. It's wild.
It's pretty incredible.
But then I read these stories about Teslas getting confused by roundabouts.
Oh, yeah.
Or like slamming on the brakes for no reason.
Yeah, it's like the tech is brilliant, but...
It's like they have these weird blind spots.
Exactly. And that's actually a perfect example of what we're diving into today.
Okay, because you sent over this text, Technologie in the tussentijd.
Yeah, Technologie in the tussentijd.
Which, I have to admit, even the title has me a little intimidated.
Well, it's Dutch, but it translates to technology in the interim.
Okay, so the in-between time. Catchy.
Right. And it's all about AI and how it intersects with things like public value and even democracy.
So, like, the big questions.
Exactly.
And it sounds like this whole self-driving car thing ties into that.
It does.
Yeah.
The author, Martijn van der Steen, uses it as a way to explain what he calls the interim of AI.
The interim of AI.
It's this kind of awkward phase where AI is incredibly powerful, right?
Okay.
But it's still under development. Like those self-driving cars, it can do some pretty amazing things, but...
But you're not quite ready to hand over the wheel just yet.
Exactly. And the thing is, we don't actually know what the final form of AI is going to look like.
Okay, so will it eventually figure it out?
Will it overcome these limitations and reach what Van der Steen calls digital perfection?
Digital perfection.
Or will these imperfections just always be there?
Digital perfection versus permanent imperfection. Man, you know how to hook someone.
It's a big question.
It is, and it seems pretty important to figure out, especially if AI is going to play a bigger role in our lives.
Exactly.
So how do we even begin to approach this interim? What does Van der Steen suggest?
Well, he starts by making this really interesting distinction between what he calls silicons and carbons.
Silicons and carbons sounds like a sci-fi movie title.
Right, but it's actually a really helpful way to think about this. So silicons represent AI systems.
Okay, makes sense.
All about data, speed, processing power. Carbons, on the other hand, that's us, humans.
So I'm guessing our strengths aren't exactly about processing millions of data points per second.
Not quite. Where we excel is our ability to deal with ambiguity.
Yeah.
You know, understanding context.
The stuff that's hard to quantify.
Yes, and making those judgment calls based on, like, experience, intuition, gut feeling even.
Which, ironically, is often what gets us in trouble.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But think about it in terms of those self-driving cars. The AI, the silicon,
Right.
it can handle all those complex calculations involved in driving, but
But it's those moments that require a deeper understanding of the world.
like those unwritten rules of the road, you know? That's where it struggles.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. Because if AI is having trouble with those unwritten rules,
Yeah.
in something like driving, what happens when we start talking about something way more complex, like government?
Ah, now you're thinking like Van der Steen. That's exactly the question he wants us to consider.
Because it's not just about whether AI can do something, it's about whether it should.
And how it does it. And what happens when things go wrong.
Okay, so buckle up, everyone. Things are about to get interesting.
And it's not some far-off thing either. Governments are already using AI.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Like using it to process huge amounts of data.
Okay, but how does that actually work?
Well, think about it. Imagine being able to analyze crime data
Right.
to predict where to allocate police resources.
Oh, wow.
Or using AI to personalize public services, you know, like tailoring them to individual needs.
That sounds amazing in theory, but
Right.
well, it makes me think back to that whole silicon carbon thing. If AI is all about data, and data itself can reflect, like, existing biases, what's stopping those biases from ending up in these government systems?
You're hitting on a huge point, and it's something Van der Steen is very concerned about. He argues that AI,
Yeah.
while it can definitely lead to a more efficient government, it can also blur the lines
Blur the lines how?
between, like, factual analysis and actual value judgments.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Because algorithms, even when they're designed with the best of intentions,
Right.
can end up perpetuating inequalities.
So we're back to that idea that we can't just let AI run wild. We need to make sure it's actually aligned
Exactly.
with our values, with what we consider to be fair and just.
100%.
But then that brings up a whole other question.
Which is?
How do we even measure something as complex as fairness? And how do we define what it means
Yeah.
for AI to serve the public good? Like, what does that even mean?
Okay, so this is where Van der Steen brings in another important concept,
Hit me with it.
public value. And it's basically about figuring out what matters most to people
Okay.
and then using the tools of government to actually achieve those things.
So, like, what kinds of things are we talking about here?
We're talking about things like access to healthcare, a clean environment,
Right, the essentials.
exactly, safe communities, affordable housing. These all fall under public value.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how this all connects. It's not enough for AI to just be efficient, right?
It's got to be meaningful.
It has to be used in a way that actually improves people's lives. But how do we make sure that happens?
That's the million-dollar question.
How do we guarantee that AI is promoting that public value and not accidentally undermining it?
Well, Van der Steen suggests using what's called Moore's strategic triangle.
Your strategic triangle. Lay it on me.
So think of it as a three-sided approach to understanding and managing public value when it comes to AI.
3 sides. Okay. I'm intrigued. What's side 1?
So side one is the public value account. And basically it's asking, what is this AI system actually offering?
Okay.
What are the tangible benefits to the community? Like, let's say a public library is using AI.
Okay, I like that example.
The public value account would be looking at how that AI is being used. Is it making the library better?
So, like, personalized book recommendations.
Exactly. Or maybe creating a more efficient cataloging system. Things like that.
Okay, so far so good.
Yeah.
But AI can also be used to make decisions about, like, who gets access to what resources. And that feels like where things can get a bit more complicated.
100%. And that takes us to side two of the triangle, the authorizing environment.
Authorizing environment. Okay, so who gets to decide?
Exactly. This is about figuring out who has the power to determine what that AI should be doing.
So is it elected officials? Is it community groups? The people directly affected by the system?
It could be all of them. And figuring that out, that's a big part of the challenge.
Okay, so in the case of our library, this could mean, like, setting up a system
Yeah,
where the community gets to have a say in how the AI is used.
exactly. Like how it shapes the library's collection, its programs, things like that.
So it's not just about what AI can do, it's about making sure there's a democratic process
I like how you put that.
for deciding how it's used and whose values it ultimately reflects.
You got it. Now, for the final side of the triangle, we have organizational capacity.
Organizational capacity sounds important.
It is, and it's basically asking, does the organization, in this case our library,
Yeah.
actually have what it takes to use this AI system properly?
So do they have the resources, the training?
Yes. The ethical frameworks in place to make sure it's being used responsibly and effectively.
Wow. So it's really this whole balancing act.
Right.
Making sure the AI delivers that value, that it's implemented fairly, and that the organization itself is equipped to handle it.
It's a lot. But understanding those three sides of the strategic triangle gives us a starting point.
It's a framework, like you said.
Exactly. For thinking about how to use AI in a way that actually benefits everyone.
So we've got this framework, this strategic triangle, to help us think about AI and public value,
Yeah.
but it still feels like, even with the best intentions, there's a lot that could go wrong.
There is.
So what can we actually do? What are some practical steps we can take to make sure AI is being used for good?
Well, Van der Steen talks about three main strategies for this interim period.
Okay.
And it all comes back to that idea that we, the carbons, we need to be involved.
We can't just be passive.
Exactly. We have to actively shape how AI evolves.
Yeah.
So strategy number one is all about safeguarding our democratic and legal principles.
So fairness, transparency, all of that.
Exactly. Making sure those are baked into AI systems from the start, especially when we're talking about government.
And we touched on this earlier, but how do we actually do that? How do you embed those principles into an algorithm?
Well, it starts by recognizing that AI systems, they're not neutral.
Right. They reflect the people who create them.
They reflect the data they're trained on, the biases that already exist.
Right. So we need to be on the lookout for those biases.
All the time. We have to be vigilant about identifying them and mitigating them.
Give me an example. What kind of bias are we talking about here?
Okay, let's say an AI system is being used to determine who gets access to a social service.
Okay.
The data used to train that AI, it might reflect existing biases in the system.
Like what kind of biases?
It could be anything. It could be that the data unintentionally disadvantages people based on where they live.
Oh, wow. Like their zip code.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or their past interactions with government agencies.
I see. So the AI could just perpetuate those existing inequalities.
Exactly. So we need safeguards at every stage, from how the algorithm is designed to the data that's used to ongoing monitoring.
So constant vigilance, regular checks, and a way to course correct if things go off track.
You got it. It's a lot of work, but these are high stakes.
People's lives are affected by these decisions.
Exactly. And that brings us to van der Steen's second strategy, which is steering AI towards public value.
Okay, and we talked about this with the strategic triangle, right?
Yeah, but how do we actually make sure that AI is benefiting everyone?
Not just the people who built it.
Right. And the key here is inclusion. We need to make sure that a diverse range of voices are involved in shaping how AI is used.
So we're talking about citizen engagement, getting feedback from communities, right?
Exactly. Democratizing AI, so it's not just a tool for the powerful, but something that everyone can benefit from.
Okay, I'm sensing a theme here. Be proactive, be engaged, make your voice heard.
Yes. Because we can't just sit back and hope for the best. We have to be involved in shaping this technology.
And that leads us to that third strategy, building capacity.
Yes. Investing in strategic capacity. Governments need their own AI expertise.
We need people in government who actually understand how these systems work.
Yes. People who can ask the tough questions, who can hold those developing and deploying AI accountable.
It's not just about the tech, it's about having the right people in place.
And the right culture. A culture of critical thinking around AI, ethical reflection.
Building those bridges between government, industry, and the people actually impacted by these systems.
Exactly. Because it's not a one-time fix. It's an ongoing process.
We have to keep adapting and evolving as AI itself evolves.
We do. There's no other way.
Well, van der Steen definitely leaves us with a lot to think about.
He does.
You know, he said that not making a choice is a choice for a loss of position of carbons and of the government. And that really stuck with me.
It's a powerful statement.
Because it reminds us that we're not powerless. We have agency, we have a responsibility to shape this technology.
We have to be active participants in shaping the future of AI.
Because that future isn't predetermined. We create it.
That's right. We decide what it looks like.
And that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into AI, public value, and this crucial moment of technological change.
It's been great exploring these ideas.
We covered a lot, but hopefully we've given you some new questions to ponder, maybe even inspired you to get involved.
That's what we were hoping for.
So until next time, keep learning, keep questioning.
And keep those carbon-based brains engaged.
I love it. See you next time.